I got to say, and we'll talk about Mike Norvell here in a second, that once they got, it's so fragile with a program that's not been successful recently. And the reason I say that is, boom, come out opening night and look great against Notre Dame. If that would have been a win, and you're talking about a team that finished 11-1 on the other side, Notre Dame, then, who knows what the season would have looked like. But even as it was, I'm guessing, because most Florida State people didn't like to lose, of course, but came off that game thinking we're pretty good. We might be a little bit better than we expected. Like that was good to see that, we hung with a top 10 team. And then Jacksonville State happened. Then it did a couple losses, and you're sitting at 0-4. And the Syracuse game was on the like, if that would have went to 0-5, it could have gotten really ugly. Then the season turns around to a certain extent, get some decent wins, but then can't win the final game to get to a bowl game. And it just seemed awfully on the brink of something really disastrous. And at the same time, could have gotten to a bowl game. That would have been a big deal. So I'm going to go two different directions. The first one's going to be, you said people don't want to hear about the past and, not to dig up the past in terms of the last recruiting class. I'm going to dig up the past anyway. I'm a big history guy when it comes to college football, because I'm curious about your thoughts about where it went wrong for this program. Was it simply because we're talking about, if we rewind to 2013-14, Florida State's owning the ACC and Clemson's the only challenger, but you guys are holding them down to number 2. That's the game of the year. And then it transitioned into 2015, and obviously that's when Deshaun Watson and Clemson flipped it, but Florida State's still playing a tough game against Clemson in 15 and 16, and even despite a down year with 6 losses in 17, still a close game. Was it all just when Jimbo left, did he pretty much take the program with him, or were there a decline and a downturn before that?
Yeah, it was a decline and downturn before that. If you go back to the two, and a lot of that stuff, to be honest with you, man, Dalvin Cook masked a lot of FSU's issues, a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, Dalvin Cook was just that good. If you take away Dalvin Cook from the 2000 and not necessarily 2015, because with that year we still had Jalen Ramsey and a couple others, but that 2016 year, if you take away Dalvin Cook for that 2016 year, there's no telling what the end result of that season would be. We finished 10-3, but we started off really shaky in that year. Of course, we had the game against Louisville, the Lamar Jackson game, losing 63-20, and then you have South Florida. Even though we beat them by 20, South Florida, first play of the game, they went 80. This is a Willie Taggart team. Matter of fact, it was pretty good.
I remember that game.
Yeah, they went up top on us the first play of the game, and jump out 7-0. We ended up winning 55-35, but you end up getting 35 points to a USF team. Then you have the North Carolina game where you basically let Mitch Trubisky lock up the number 1 pick against that defense, throwing for 400 yards, lost 37-25. So we started out the gate 3-2 with a lot of those games that could have went sideways. And then after that game, Jimbo had the guys basically write a promise note saying, hey, I'm going to promise to work harder, not loaf on the field, finish plays, this, that, and another. You shouldn't have to do that, especially as the midpoint of the year. You should have your head coach having promissory notes for you to work harder. So the signs are kind of there. I do, and this is something that I've learned after the fact. Those 2000 and Jimbo Fisher, so to speak, he wasn't really a disciplinarian. He was never that type of guy. A lot of the onus fell down to the players. We were really a player-led team when it came to getting stuff in check, making sure guys did stuff the right way. Telvin Smith and LaMarcus Joyner, those were the big guys in regards to that 2013 season that pretty much ran the ship as far as making sure everyone did everything right, make sure everyone was on time. And if you weren't on time, if you didn't do something right, those were the guys who were going to hold you accountable. We kind of lost that with players in regards to holding each other accountable and, holding up to the standard of the program. So we got a different mindset of kids coming in regards to, hey, it's not my issue. I'm an individual, focused on myself. And that kind of started the issues in regards to the decline. And of course, we were recruiting star power, so to speak, on paper really good. But a lot of that stuff didn't really translate. So I know, and we speak about the offensive line and how it kind of declined, how bad it got. Jimbo Fisher won off. He neglected the offensive line room and the linebacker room down the stretch of his tenure. Yes, he still recruited some areas great, and I do believe that after I noticed for a fact after the 2016 season, if he was to elect to stay at Florida State, he was going to basically clean house and start having new staff and just a brand new approach, so to speak. But to kind of get back to what I was saying about the 2016 year and guys just kind of the different type of mindset that we had. The signs were there. It was one recruiting class where we finished like top 5 recruiting, but we only recruited one offensive lineman in that class. He was a low hanging three-star in Brady Scott. So you bring in one offensive lineman in one class, and the big offensive line class where we had Landon Dickerson. It was a really highly recruited class in regards to Landon Dickerson, Juwan Williams, things of that nature. They didn't really turn out. Landon Dickerson ended up transferring to Alabama. Juwan Williams was a top 5 offensive tackle prospect in the country. Never panned out at Florida State. Once he played Willie Taggart's first year, to be quite honest with you, he was one of the worst offensive tackles I've seen within the Florida State uniform. Just didn't look like he belonged, to be quite honest with you. So to see that kind of slow matriculation happening, then Willie Taggart comes in and kind of makes things worse with the situation that he was handed, because he was handed a bad situation with APR, kids not going to class. So Willie Taggart had to fix that in order to avoid scholarship losses. So that kind of hurt recruiting also in trying to keep, well, not necessarily recruiting, but keeping kids that probably should have been processed out of the program due to, not being program fits and just being cancerous situations, having to have them stick around due to needing them to graduate to avoid penalty from the NCAA. So you bring in that, and then organizational wise from Willie wasn't the greatest. Fast forward to that, you have the Jimbo debacle towards the end, the Taggart debacle, and then you get Mike Norvell comes in. Okay, so you're dealing with the mess from 2 former head coaches. As soon as you get in, you have a COVID year. So you're out of the office. You're not in touch with your players. You missed the entire spring. I think we had like 2 practices that 2020 spring. So with the COVID year, players are not held accountable in regards to working out. They're pretty much working out on their own. So you got guys that from two coaching tenures, pretty much you go through one tenure where players kind of do what they want. The second tenure where players continue to do what they want. You bring in that with the COVID year, in which where they're by themselves and have to work out and do things like that, where they're not really doing those things, because if you're on campus, you're required to go to those workouts. But when you're at home, you're just not doing it. So you get to camp in August and everyone's out of shape. No one was really accountable. And you have a bad COVID year. And that's pretty much where we're at right now as far as the program in Florida State. That you kind of go until the next year, you start 0-4. Heck, the Louisville game, you was down 0-31 at one point in time. Then you come back and you lose the game 23-31. So I don't know, something to switch with three and a half games in, a light just switched. They storm back and lose a close one to Louisville, finish 5-3 down the stretch, and in my opinion, down the stretch with the toughest games, so to speak, with Miami, Florida, Clemson, NC State. You still had to play those teams. So you went 5-3 down the stretch with a chance to win a lot of those games that you lost 3-2. So it's something to look forward to. I'm looking forward to this season. This is pretty much the long process in regards to the long rebuild, and I think we can kind of see the end result right here. So 8 wins is what I'm thinking for this upcoming year due to that.
Yeah, that Clemson game, and I know that they had quarterback issues, offensive line issues. They didn't have the offense that they've had in the past, but that was the first time I've turned on Florida State Clemson since 2017, and it felt like there was some juice, and it felt like almost not quite, certainly like a Florida State Clemson game should.